Hi, my name is Chuck Thompson. I'm the author of Jasper Lilla and the Wolves of Banner Elk. And I want to tell you a little bit about how the book came about. There is an old Indian expression. Obviously, this would be a northern Indian group, but they would say when the people were starving, the Creator saved them with a miracle and sent them the caribou. And then a sickness came to the caribou, and God took mercy on them again, and the Creator sent a cure for the sickness in the caribou, and the cure was the wolf. Now that's a real legend about wolves, and wolves have always been somewhat of a fascination for me. That's a very cool story, and I began to wonder, wolves are known to be sort of the caretakers of all sorts of ecological systems. And when they come to an area, they clean up all sorts of things. And generally they do that by cleaning up the weak and the parts of a species that will weaken the species. And I began to think, what would that be like if they did that with humans? Because sometimes the characteristics in humans that weaken the species, things like, say, greed or the willingness to take advantage of each other, sometimes those qualities are rewarded in humankind. So what would be sort of a wolf approach to improving the species in spite of us? And so that was the background, and it led me to write this story, which is not part of the plot line, but the story I'm about to tell you, Martha's story, is the story of the first encounter with the Wolves of Banner Elk. Martha is a retired librarian, and she is rewarding herself at the end of her career with a brand new car, and she's out taking it for a ride and up in the hills and woods, and she turns around a corner and she comes to a red pickup truck that is parked on the side of the road, and it's jacked up and there's a man lying on the ground. Now Martha, being the kind, helpful, compassionate person she is, screeches to a halt, pulls over behind the red pickup. She jumps out of her car and runs over and puts her hand on the back of the man and, cries out, are you hurt? Do you need help? As soon as she touches him, she realizes it's not a human being. It's a dummy of some sort. And she gets scared immediately. And as she stands and backs away, wondering who would do such a thing, a man grabs her from behind. He's real strong. He hooks over her back and lifts her. And so as she kicks and screams and thrashes and claws, nothing really works, as this man just carries her on his hip, and he pulls her further and further into the woods. At some point, he's far enough in the woods that he just throws her down. And she's panicking, and she's crying out, and she's thinking to herself, what do I do to save myself? And she says to him, my name is Martha. She thinks if she talks to him and makes him see that she's a human, he may have compassion. She says, I have a daughter, I have a grandson, I'm a retired librarian. And the man's expression doesn't change. And at one point she looks up and she's pleading with him, why are you doing this? And he says to her, I'm a lion, you're a lamb. It's just the way it is. And he grabs her by the hair and he begins to drag her further into the woods. And they come to a clearing, and he stops abruptly and bangs her head against his thigh when he stops. And he just stands there, and she doesn't really know what's doing. She's crying, and so she wipes her eyes, and she starts to plead with him again, and she notices this pained look on his face as he looks across her at something else. And she turns, and there, at the edge of a clearing, is the largest white wolf she's ever seen. And it's just standing there, staring at them. Actually, staring at him. And then they hear something completely on the other side of the clearing. And they both turn and look, and it's another wolf, just staring at them. And the man picks her up and turns her to be between him and the wolves. She thinks to herself, what a coward. And it doesn't take too long before another pair of wolves come out of the woods, just in front of them. And the man pushes her slightly, and he begins backing up away from her. More wolves appear in a crescent around them. But as the man backs up, the wolves, who are paying almost no attention to her, they pass her by, encircling the man, but leaving her on the outside of the circle. When she realizes they have no interest in her, she begins to go back towards the street. And as she starts to leave the clearing, the man cries out to her, "Are you just going to leave me? I don't know what to do." And so Martha turns and looks at him. And before she leaves, she says, "Why don't you try telling them you're a lion?"